قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome to Finding Me on the ITV Networks, the second interview with my very beautiful guest, Nabila Raja, who's a third-year veterinary science student at Ondus Support, which is part of the University of Pretoria, and with Rasia Wazar, who is a second-year veterinary science student at the same university, Ondus Support campus, where they, of course, deal with the very many encounters and ethical questions regarding animals, the healing of animals, and it is an important topic. April is the month which is recognized internationally as Anti-Animal Cruelty Month, and I thought it would be an important discussion to raise with two Muslim women. Yes, two Muslim women who have entered this profession, not medical science, not accounting, not sociology, not even the BA Arts, but of course a profession that deals with animals. And Nabila and Rasia, both of you, we had lots of fun looking at your Twitter account because when we speak about animals and you speak about veterinary sciences, sadly the limitation is the belief that you're only working with cats and dogs or maybe horses here and there, and they forget that animals is far more than that. But let's hear your experience. What was the big issue?
So I posted a picture of myself holding a piglet on Instagram as my story, and oh my god, the Haram police came for me. I received a lot of positive feedback from like the more open-minded, and a lot of their comments said like, oh my god, these aunties are going to come for you, or the Haram police is going to come for you. And there was a lot of negative feedback as well, which was quite
negative. What? In what way? I mean, it's an animal.
There was a lot of comments that like, that's so disgusting, we don't eat pigs, so why are you holding it? And the first thing that sparked from my mind, it's Allah's creation at the end of the day. Whether we're forbidden from eating quite a few things. Pork is forbidden, but that doesn't stop us from helping the animal. It's their welfare. We have to still show kindness and mercy towards them.
Certainly. And for you, Nabila?
I just want to speak more about the diversity of our profession. It's not limited to cats and dogs. I think because we live in this suburban community, we see a practice here, practice here, practice here. And veterinary science is much more than that. You work in the state, you're involved in legislature. We are meat inspectors, by the way. So really? Yes, we are. we condemn meat, and that's important in terms of, you know, our own halal certified abattoirs and farms, and we are researchers, we are pathologists, dentists, psychologists, gynecologists. We are all the ists in one, in an Ian. In an Ian. But nobody realizes that we can do prosthesis. We go into sports medicine, internal medicine. There's so much endocrinology, the same things that you'll find at any of our clinics, anesthesiology. But we just have to take the time to figure that out and see what, you know, what the profession actually offers us.
And you're dealing with a vast diversity of animals. And I think in a country like South Africa, where we have so much in terms of farms, in terms of sports, like you were speaking about, and in terms of domestic animals. But perhaps maybe the hardest part of your profession would be when you have to decide what to do with the animal. I mean, I've been in that situation twice, where two of my cats were seriously injured, one from an accident and another one who had a terrible cancerous tumor and was wasting away. The question is, what do you do? Do you euthanize? Or do you not euthanize? And for me also, I went through this moral dilemma. Is it right? Is it not right? What do I do? And my son kept on saying to me, Mommy, look into their eyes. You can see they're in pain. Look into his eyes, Mommy, you know. And it reminded me to a particular show, a documentary I watched of an elephant who lost its young one, and it started to tear, and you just saw the tears rolling down the elephant's eyes, and he said to me, Mommy, do you remember the elephant that cried? Why would it cry if it does not feel pain? They feel pain, Mommy, you know. And so in a way he convinced me that, you know what, I have to put aside my human values and consider where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a different set of laws for them. But the set of laws that is created for them does not exclude mercy and kindness, as you spoke about. And so when you're in that situation and you have to advise somebody or you have to do it yourself, how do they teach you to deal with it?
So the first thing that I think we would have to figure out is Islamically where we stand on that. And again, just like you said, it boils down to mercy and kindness. If there's an animal that has broken its leg, you know, car accident or something, this animal is bleeding out or something, do you think it's fair for us, knowing we have the ability to ease its suffering and put it out of its misery earlier, rather than it walking into the bush, secondary infection, nerve damage, who knows what else? That's not fair.
And just from an Islamic point of view, we can't neglect animals, and having an animal that's just going to waste away, that we can't do something to help them, we're going to neglect them in that way.
I think there is a dearth of conversation and maybe even discussion about this even from our ulama, from our scholars, to speak about that, you know, what is the moral standpoint, what is the ethical viewpoint, what is Islamic jurisprudence in these situations. We need to have conversations because it's a reality, right? I mean, if you look at the Middle East, you lived in the Middle East and they raise horses. They raise camels. They do some wicked things with animals.
It's very cool.
They do some. I mean, I saw a documentary recently of what was happening in Qatar, where they have these young kids that they bring in. They actually bring them as slave labor from Afghanistan, etc. 4 or 5 years, because the lighter you are, the faster you jockey, right? And so they were abusing these kids in terms of this, and then they suddenly just shut out the media because it was bad for the sheikh's reputation.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this is not talked about because it suits a particular agenda.
So this fortunately has changed. Now they use robotics, which is, well, they have the money for it, so why not? The using of the children was something that happened very long ago. Their community is also evolving much more slowly than ours, which is again why we should appreciate the resources that we have when it comes to education and awareness. So they have since swapped out the kids for robotics. So if you Google camel races now, you'll find these little like robots basically sitting on the camels, and they're like GoPros, I guess, if you will. But also again, coming back to euthanasia, in our syllabus we are taught you know, just the concept of euthanasia from, I think, first year. We have modules in each year called VPL, Veterinary Professional Life, and there's a module for each year that you are in onderstepoort for or in the faculty for, and they address certain topics. So like the first year VPL talks about the diversity of the profession. The second one will talk about handling. I know that in one of the modules we talk about like if you have a client, how to console that client, what to say.
This year they introduced a new, sorry to interrupt, they introduced a new thing called Train Tool, and it was videos of scenarios that have happened. So like it's a video of someone saying they're coming in with their cat, there's nothing that can be done for their cat, and you have to take a video of yourself responding to your client. And now they've introduced it from second year because they said they realized
it's very important.
They only do that later on in the profession, and by then you already have to be doing this, and you have to be a pro, because to tell someone that you have to put down their loved pet is a hard thing to do.
It's like putting down a child. It's like putting down a child.
Exactly, and also it's like what we learn about as well is there's a bit of psychology involved, because kids at a certain age, before that, I think it's 9 or something, they do not understand the concept of death. So a lot of people will say, oh, you know, they went to another home, they went to a happy place, and we shouldn't actually be doing that. We shouldn't be easing them into an idea that's not real, because then you have to change that to something else. So there's ways and approaches for how you start easing them into the actual concept of death. And from about, I think it's 9 onwards, you can sort of be a bit more realistic about it. Sometimes your kids might ask, can I sit in the procedure and watch? And that's up to the parent. Not the veterinarian. Sometimes parents do look and say, what do you think I should do, doc? And that's not for you to decide. That's for you to say, listen, I'm here if you need counsel on that, and I can sit and educate your child in the most gentle way possible. But it's very, very important, the concept of euthanasia. Like you were saying previously in Qatar as well, their horses are literally like family members to them. Okay, not only are they majestic, they are, like, I mean, it's in poetry, it's in their history, it's in everything to do with their culture and tradition. So there were a few cases where there were horses with this disease called laminitis. Their hooves get super inflamed inside, and it's literally their movement becomes robotic almost. It's terrible. If you YouTube videos on laminitis, it's terrible. It's a debilitating disease. Eventually they are bedridden on wood shavings, and because they lie down so much, they get bed sores. Literally every step they take is painful, and that tip of the hoof is driving into some sensitive tissue. So it's really sore. And at some point, the laminitis gets so bad that there's nothing more you can do except for supportive therapy or euthanasia. And for them, they're like, are you crazy? It's like if I wanted to, you know. But so they don't consider it at all, especially the longer they've had the horse and the more it's like a part of the family, the harder it is to let go. So culturally now, we can't walk in as well and be like, this needs to happen. There's a way to ease people into this. Culturally, you have to study someone's culture, understand it, immerse yourself in it, and then after some time, once you've gotten to know someone, speak to them about the concept, try to convince them.
But I think that's when also the role of the religious scholars would come in to
Most
create
definitely.
the fatwas, or to perhaps really study this, because it's the dynamic of modern life that needs some addressing. We're at the end of this particular segment. We have one more that we're coming back. But Rasya, I would like you to give me your comments on the euthanasia.
Personally, I believe euthanasia is okay. Obviously dependent on the type of case, the type of scenario. Animals that can't be helped, it's cruel for us to watch them suffer. At the end of the day, they're still beings, and it's cruel to watch them die and waste away.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of education that needs to be done.
Most definitely.
And I think research for us as well. And we need learned scholars, individuals, people who are proficient in these kind of things to come out and start helping us to find a way forward to deal with these things. But ultimately, let's hope that the haram police are not after you after this comment. We'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me on the ITV networks with my two wonderful students, and that's Nabila and Rasya, and we're talking veterinary sciences, animal healing, and of course appreciation and respect for animals. Now, before we went on to the break, we spoke or touched on the concept of euthanasia, and Nabila and Rasya, I want you to both give me your comment on this. So besides just looking at the pain and the suffering of the animal, dealing with this intense emotion, of course at some point you as an individual in that situation, now being in a position of taking life, it must affect you traumatically. And before we started this, you told me that veterinary scientists are one of those, you said second?
Second to dentists.
Yeah, second to dentists who are in that profession where they commit suicide. So, I mean, sure. On the one hand, I've been reading all these things about doctors, and now it's the doctors, the dentists. Gosh, I just think we should stay away from them altogether. The veterinary sciences. No, let's be honest. The mental health of the professional themselves, I mean, that is something of serious consideration.
Yes, so veterinarians, unfortunately, I think in any scope that the profession has, are overworked and underpaid. It's just a reality. So big shock for anyone who thought
Is there a shortage of veterinary scientists in South Africa? Is there a shortage?
I think in different disciplines of the profession, especially I know in production, we need vets. We really, in small animals, I think there's more than enough.
And they've been encouraging it lately in our studies.
Yeah.
And they've introduced a lot more production study.
What do you mean by production?
Production will be, you have large production and small stock. So large production are more like cattle. And then in cattle, you have intensive and extensive farming. So extensive is more like the ones that just graze on the veld out there. Intensive are your feedlots, the ones where the environment is much more controlled. That also for I think more non-Muslims would be the pigs. And then maybe not for us, yeah, no, I'm joking. But also small stock would be your sheep and goats. We also, I think, are in need of more exotic vets. Exotics are like your guinea pigs, hamsters, rabbits, wild cats, meerkats, birds, reptiles. Because we have a few of them, they're very skilled at what they do, but what happens when they leave? Who's going to fill those positions?
So we're talking about the mental health. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so like I did say, second to dentists, unfortunately, our profession boasts our reputation for suicide rates, depression, anxiety, divorce rates, all that.
But that's almost like a that's almost like a contradiction in terms, because working with animals is supposed to be healing, isn't it?
The thing is, like I say, they're overworked, they're underpaid. When you drive past a clinic and you see clinic hours are from 8 to 4, 8 to 6 or whatever it is,
That's
that
too long.
vet is not there from 8. That vet is doing rounds. Then there's the lunch break where you think they're having a lunch
But
break.
they're doing operations, right?
There's surgery time. And then there's after hours. What happens if just 15 minutes before you close, there's a case that comes in?
That happens with me all the time. My animals decide to get sick after hours and in a weekend. Typical.
That's the first thing. The second thing is the emotional component of you feeling so much of compassion towards this animal. And then the human component. A lot of people feel that when we become vets, and vet students themselves say that we are following this profession because we don't want to deal with people. Well, big surprise there. Who owns the animals? The client is, you know, a human being, fully fledged. So what also is difficult there is if you work in practices where your clients don't come from the background, the you know, most appropriate or the wealthiest, most well-off socioeconomic background, and they really care for this animal, and there's nothing you can do for this animal. So if a client comes to you and he or she can't afford treatment, consult fee, surgery, or whatever it is, are you going to take out that money from your personal funds because you yourself have your own family to take care of, your own pets, your own whatever you might be contributing to? Then there are the few vets that do that, but then the idea is, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? Are you running your business into the ground? You have salaries to pay. Are you making those salaries? Because as vets, again, now we have to draw a line in that field of compassion, and that is extremely difficult. A lot of people, again, when they feel that veterinary science is about cats and dogs or whatever it is, they don't understand the ethical implications of becoming a veterinarian. So it's a very emotionally intensive profession to follow, just like our medical human counterparts, but more so because when that animal, and Rasia can maybe allude more to this, is when that animal is in pain and you can just see this pure sadness. I mean, it hits you here and it goes right out the back. Or when you've treated an animal, they don't say thank you, but you can see it in their eyes. You know, it's just really emotionally intense.
And I think for anybody, Rasia, who hasn't interacted with the animals or has forgotten what it means, you know, to be with an animal or to respect animals, I would recommend, and would you agree with me, that all they must do is just look into the animal's eyes?
Definitely, their eyes tell a huge story. Like Nabila was saying, after you've treated them, if you just look them in the eyes, you can see the gratefulness almost, even though they're in pain from the procedure that's been done to them. Animals know.
Do you find that there's a lot of cruelty in our community?
Yes, a lot of our people buy products that have been tested on animals, for example makeup, and we don't even know. We need to become more conscious of showing and expressing animal cruelty as a thing, because it's an often forgotten. And
you know, when I asked you that question, it never occurred to me actually about you know, testing on animals.
And we know we love makeup.
Yeah, and we all wear makeup, and
just
there
a
isn't
simple,
that consciousness. Yeah.
just a very common brand among our community is MAC.
MAC, yes.
And that's the biggest tester of animals. And just in my friend group, I often go shopping with my friends, and we'll walk into MAC and I wouldn't buy anything, and they'd often ask why.
I know, I've had this debate on Twitter as well quite a few times with people. It's like, you know, it's as if it does not matter, that life doesn't matter.
Each person needs to take a small step. If each person does that and only supports brands that do take the effort to not test on animals and boycott brands that do, every person feels that their small effort is not going to help. But if every person has that mentality, we're not going to make a difference.
We're quickly running out of time. I want you to tell us, Nabila, just a little bit about the One Life program that you've
One Health program.
One Health program, sorry.
So One Health is something that we're trying to raise awareness for. It is a multidisciplinary approach at long-term community improvement. Because while the vets or any other viewer, yourself even, you're trying to make this difference that you can in the community, you can't do it alone. The vets can work on the animals. Who's working on the people? Go to a community, you want to improve the community over 2 years, or a few years, whatever, you've got a program. We might work on the animals, but Who's imparting the education? Are we doing it properly? If not, we need to ask an actual educational professional who's looking at the people. Soil scientists, what if they're communal farmers there? Agricultural scientists, animal scientists, sports scientists. Let's plot the social dynamics of this community, because it's holistic development.
Which reaffirms everything which you said right at the start, the triangle, right? Humans, animals and environment.
It's very, very, very important. So if anybody wants to find out about that, literally you just Google One Health. It's very important, and I think every profession has that community engagement department in their companies or firms or whatever. They should maybe tweak it to just fit a One Health approach.
And that's wonderful, because I think there's plenty of business people who can even start incorporating this, and women who are entrepreneurs. Yes. From their own side, there's something that you can do. We're at the end, and I would like you to explain to me from your own personal viewpoints, your understanding of the spiritual aspect of being in this profession and then interacting with animals and the environment. So how do you view it?
I think interacting with animals brings out the spirituality that we need. Again, it boils down to kindness and mercy. The Prophet told us to have mercy on animals, even if it's just a sparrow. And I think we need to reconnect with that. Being spiritual is not just praying your salah or fasting, and we need to see it as a holistic approach.
Jazakallah khair for that. And Nabila, your point?
It's just humbling is the only word I can say or give. When you are humbled by the idea that you are capable of so much more, the idea that you have rational thinking, whereas animals are purely instinctive, they have irrational thinking. Just that idea that you're capable of so much more, all the things we take for granted, the coordination that we have, the fact that we can move our limbs in all these different rotations and some animals can't, the idea that we can problem solve better than animals can, things like that. It's just humbling. So why not use those skills just for basic improvement, and it doesn't take a lot.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for giving me this time and for giving me this wonderful input, and of course for allowing me to brag and boast, because I at last had the opportunity to show the talent in the Muslim community and the diversity, and it's coming from women. So with that, I'd like to say to our audience that please think about this. It's very, very important how you treat animals, how you view animals, how you interact with animals, and most important of all, just remember, as I've said this many, many times, all you really need to do is learn to be kind. Learn to be kind, and from there you will respect. You will respect the environment, you'll respect the people that you interact with, and most important of all, you will respect that life which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on this planet Earth. And it's not simply for us to consume or to abuse, but for us to be in awe of the greatness of our Creator. Fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا فيما